Hi, hello. My name's Sam. I'm the minister at French Community Church, and normally I would go into schools to go and do like assemblies and things like that, and I really still want to keep that up if I can. I'm actually finding my time is still as stretched as it's ever been, just in a very different way right now during lockdown and stuff. But I still wanted to kind of portray a lot of the kind of activities and excitement that I've got to do, so I'm probably going to get my kids involved with other things. But I just thought, where can this start? Well, as we're in the time of Easter, I thought I would begin with the Easter story and the Easter message. And in order to do that, first you need to kind of understand this massive concept called sin. Now, I don't know if you've ever come across that word. It's a tricky word. It's one that like people don't always like to talk about because it's a bit of a bad word at times. And by sin, I do not mean like, this is bad, this is wrong, you've done this thing, so that's what affects that thing. For me, what it really means is how it affects the relationships of yourself and others. Because both those things affect your relationship with God as well. You've got to kind of understand that to understand why we kind of talk, why as a Christian, we talk about like the cross and everything that kind of goes alongside that, and Jesus rising from the dead and all the really cool, important things. So I just got a couple of illustrations I was going to show you guys to help that. Right. So, firstly, imagine this is God. See, I've got absolutely no idea what God looks like, and I think far too often we think of him like as an old man with a big grey beard and that sort of thing, and I think a lot of our animations, you know who you are, have had something to do with that as well. And I just kind of wanted to get away from that concept and say, look, I've got no idea what God looks like. He embodies all things. We're kind of created in his image, but both male and female are created in this image, so it's not real, there's loads of things that we try and draw conclusions on, and we don't have an idea. So for this illustration, this is God, okay? Also for this illustration, this is us. Oh, little dudes. This is going to kind of represent us as humanity, okay? So right at the very beginning of life, let's see if we can get the angle. There we go. Right at the very beginning of life, you see we've got our little cells. We've kind of got this lovely connection with God going on here. Move my rubbish. We've got this lovely connection, and actually, our communication was a little bit like this, kind of a toilet roll tube. All right, and we were able to kind of be like, "Hey God, what's happening?" And he'd be like, "Just chilling here in my realm that no one really knows quite where it is." And we just had this awesome connection with him. We'd be able to like be like, "Hey," shouting, "Hey God, how you doing?" And we'd be able to just chat away. And it was a great time. We lived in harmony with all the little animals and things like that. It was just this beautiful time where like creation and God could just chatter away like it was nobody's business, and this was fantastic. This was great for us, it helped us be as fully, awesomely human as we could be. It helped creation be wonderful animals. We're all living together, all kind of enjoying themselves, and it sounds like a wonderful, peaceful utopia, doesn't it? And that's what it was. That's what it was. Life was just like that, and it's a hard thing for us to picture because we see the world around us and the way it's going, and we think, nah, pie in the sky, that is, Sam. That seems to be my phrase at the moment. But it wasn't. This sort of relationship was happening at a regular basis. The problem was, we thought we knew better, you see? So rather than just being like, "Hey, God, how you doing?" We'd be like, "Do you know what? I kind of feel like we know better. We know what we're doing." And so what we gradually did, now you saw that toilet roll before. What we gradually did is we kind of just filled this tube up with all sorts of rubbish. And we threw loads of things in. And as you see, the tube was still there. So, God would try and talk to us and speak to us, but as I could see, it's a little bit more muffled. we just couldn't quite do what it was and speak to God the way that we once had. And this all happened, and for anyone that knows like the Christian dialogue and the words we use, this was known as the fall. And this was the moment where we stopped thinking about, you know, how we could communicate with God and how great that was for us, and actually how we could sort ourselves out. And we went through all these different patterns and these different ways, and we could kind of hear what God was saying to us, but it wasn't completely clear. And so we kind of had a bit of a blank canvas when it came to God. We kind of were like, right, we've forgotten what it was like to talk to God. We've forgotten now. So how do we try and talk to God again? Well, there was this awesome guy called Moses, right? And what Moses did is he travelled up this very tall mountain, and he met with God there. I mean, he met with God on like numerous occasions. I don't know if you guys are part of one of the local schools where I was doing like the burning bush, and I was kind of setting this cloth on fire that didn't burn up. I'll have to do that one as well. But this, you know, he travelled up this mountain, and he felt like God was giving him, I mean, they had like stone tablets with it written on. So these 10 big things called commandments. And these were kind of the idea that God was saying, hey, if you kind of follow these, you're going to live great lives. You're going to live this kind of godly relationship that we had in the first place. But like humans, it wasn't quite good enough. It wasn't quite good enough for us. And so we tried to follow these, but it's really hard to follow a list of rules. I don't know if like your parents ever say, hey, do this, you know, get this done. It's so much harder than if you just took the initiative and went and got it done, isn't it? So a lot later on in the very famous story that we all kind of know about Christmas time, this cool thing happened in a lowly stable, right? And what happened in that stable was that God came down to earth to try and set things straight. He came down to earth and came as a baby. And we know him as Jesus. And that was like his human form. So this turned in to a little baby in the manger. I should have brought a baby, shouldn't I? Done a little magic trick. Turned into a baby in a stable. And he grew up. And one of the coolest things he did was he went up, not a mountain, but like a little hill. He went up to this hill and he taught people. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And he taught people such beautiful things. Things called the Beatitudes, which was like, you know, blessed are the weak, blessed are the poor, because they will inherit the earth. And he would say such cool things and such radical things as well that just blew people's minds. And our response to him wasn't, wow, I want to change myself and live a great life. Our response was to send him up another hill. A little bit taller, a little bit small, a little bit thinner. Another hill called Golgotha. And what we did with him there is we broke him, we tore him, we destroyed him. As a human race. And I think parts of Jesus just kind of fell away and tipped away. Because what we did then, as these other bits fell away, we put Jesus on a cross to die. But the coolest thing about this cross is that what it did is it punched a hole through this tunnel. So what we do as Christians around Easter time is we remember that this cross paved a way to be back into a relationship with God, so we can hear him so much clearer. And you know, we've come as humans on a very long journey, especially as Christians as well. We've come on a very long journey to find God, to bring back humanity. And I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but Jesus is sometimes known as the Lamb of God. And that's because as part of that big mountain that Moses went on, they thought that the best way to communicate with God was to kill little lammies. And that would be like, because that lamb was pure, that was the best way to communicate with God again. And so Jesus became that purest thing, that sinless man that died on this cross to pave that way back to God. He took the burden on himself. I think that is dead cool. I really do. I think that is so cool. So I just wanted to kind of read this story to you guys. This is the Easter story. It's one of the Usborne picture books. It's fantastic, illustrated by John Joven. And you can find this story. Let's see what the back page says. The back page says, the Easter story is nearly 2,000 years old. It comes from the section of the Bible known as the New Testament. And I think this story is absolutely marvellous. So bear with me and let me just read this one to you, okay? See, a long time ago, there lived a man named Jesus. He went across the land telling people about God's kingdom. At the city of Jerusalem, cheering crowds lined the streets. That's the Sunday that we've just celebrated that's just gone. It's called Palm Sunday. The day after he arrived, Jesus visited the local temple. When he saw traders selling things, he was furious. This is a place for praying, he shouted, not making money. One of my favourite Jesus stories, that one. Jesus chased them away and spoke about God. Sick people came to hear him, and he made them well. Now that's something I hold on to at the moment, I'll tell you what. But the priests grew angry. Jesus says he's the Son of God, they fumed. That's not allowed. Let's arrest him away from the crowds. Judas, one of Jesus' friends, overheard them. Pay me, and I'll tell you when Jesus is alone, he whispered. That night at supper, Jesus shocked his friends. The man I give this bread to will betray me, he declared. Jesus handed the bread to Judas, who ran off. Jesus murmured a prayer, then shared a meal with his friends. When you eat bread and drink wine, please think of me, he said. After supper, they walked to a nearby garden. Soon you'll all run off and leave me, said Jesus. His friends were heartbroken. We'd never do that. Jesus turned to his friend Peter, and you'll say, you don't know me 3 times. Never. Jesus made his way to another part of the garden to pray alone. When he returned, his friends were fast asleep. Couldn't you stay awake for me? Suddenly Judas was there with the temple guards. Striding over, he kissed Jesus on the cheek. This is the man you want, he told them. Jesus' friends ran off in fear. The soldiers marched Jesus to the high priest's palace. Peter joined the crowds outside. Hey, aren't you a friend of Jesus? No. Peter told the same lie twice more. Then, remembering what Jesus had said, he wept. The temple priest asked the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, to kill Jesus. Pilate thought Jesus was innocent, but he didn't want to upset the priests. Roman soldiers dressed Jesus in purple robes and stuck a crown of thorns on his head. Ha! Now you really look like a king, they jeered. They dressed Jesus in his old clothes again, when they made him drag a huge wooden cross out the city. Before long, Jesus was exhausted. As a crowd gathered, the soldiers hung Jesus on the cross. Jesus prayed to God, "Forgive them, Father. They don't know what they're doing." And that afternoon, Jesus died. The ground shuddered and shook. He really must have been the Son of God, cried a soldier. A man named Joseph wrapped Jesus' body in a linen cloth. Then he took the body to a garden with some friends, and they laid it gently inside a tomb. Puffing and panting, they heaved a heavy rock across the entrance. By now, it was late on Friday evening. That's the Friday coming up. Good Friday. On Sunday, 3 of Jesus' friends visited the tomb. To their amazement, a huge rock had been moved. Jesus' body was gone. Bum, bum, bum. Just then, a man appeared dressed all in white. "Don't be afraid," he called out to them. "Jesus is alive." The women ran off to tell the others. When a woman named Mary came back alone, there stood Jesus. "Tell my friends you've seen me," he said. Jesus' friends saw him and several times after that before he finally rose up to heaven. They told everyone they met the good news. Jesus would live forever. Fantastic. So I hope this is a good little kind of tutorial to Easter if you've never really understood the Easter story before. But if not, you know, it's always good to be refreshed, isn't it, in a good way. And remember, because of Jesus, if we follow him, we can speak to God nice and clearly again. God bless.